Well, hello again. Pastor Ray Barnett here with you. Glad that you could be with me here on the Oasis. As always, I wish you a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on what time you're watching this broadcast. Well, another cold day here in upstate New York. I don't know how it is where you are, but we certainly are having some unusual weather around the country. Closed down the I-85 yesterday in West Virginia. Snow was so bad they had to abandon their cars. We are seeing a lot of signs of the times, if you have any background in the Bible at all, and all of them indicating that the return of Jesus Christ is getting closer and closer. That's what we as Christians, we wait for. That's our expectations. And by the way, when Jesus sets up the kingdom, as we read in the book of the Revelation and in other places, there'll be no more sickness, there'll be no more pain, there'll be no more sorrow, there'll be no more tears, and no need for a broadcast such as this one, thank God. In the meantime, you need it. We all need it. And so today we'll just jump right into it. Let me remind all of you, especially the new subscribers, please stick with me. I try to stay to 20 minutes, shade under, shade over. But it's important that you stay with me for the whole broadcast if you really want to get something out of it. Also important that you watch as often as possible, because this is, think of it as a university degree in those terms. It's not a university degree, just think of it that way. And you have to go through so many years of training, depending on your field. The subject of anxiety, depression, and mental health concerns is very broad, very, very wide. And you can't do it in a broadcast, and you can't do it with a series of hacks, as I've told you so many times. We have to have understanding of what's going on. You have to have methods to combat it. And in the case of this broadcast here, to have a final cure, a final solution, going to have a lot of discipline and a lot of patience and perseverance. Anyway, please don't tune out until, I'm done. And please watch as often as possible. And when you can't, as I've mentioned to you, then spare, some time when you can watch them and just give it a nice, kind of a relaxed way to process what I'm talking about. Okay, today is January the 4th. And yesterday I proposed to you that we could make, right, the year 2022 the year that you are done with these symptoms, the year that you are done with anxieties and panic attacks and depressions and so on. I've also added that it really doesn't matter how long you've had these symptoms. Obviously, if you've had them longer, it's going to be a little bit more effort on your part and a little more difficult, okay. But what I'm trying to say is that because you've had them 10, 20, 30 years does not mean that they cannot go away permanently, because they can. And so I proposed to you yesterday that we make 2022 the year that you are rid of, if not all of your symptoms, then you're rid of a good majority of them. I did tell you this depends on a very, I use the word strident belief in Jesus Christ and in His Word, and of course the lessons that I give you here too, that you actually believe that it can be done, and then you do the hard work that it's going to take. But you will be very, very glad that you did. As I mentioned to you yesterday, Jesus said, "Whom the Son sets free is free indeed." And that, my friend, should be you. So, let me continue along this theme, this exhortation that I'm giving to you while we're in the beginning of the new year, and talk to you about how to have a nervous breakthrough. Some of you I know have had nervous breakdowns. You've written to me. We've talked about it via email or some other venue, some other way. And so I know, some of your stories. The great majority, I don't know your story. But for some of you, I know that you've been hospitalized, you've been in a psychiatric unit, you've been diagnosed. Others know, well, I've not been in the hospital, Pastor, but I am under a doctor's care, and others, it's been a long, many, many decades, and so you know, we have all these different cases right here on this channel, right here. And I want to remind you that no matter how long you've had symptoms, they can be dealt with in such a way that they disappear. But again, in order to do that, I'm going to have to explain to you how the physiology of anxiety works, and to some degree of depression as well. And then you have to really understand that it's going to be hard work. Listen, you can believe something in theory, but that doesn't mean that you actually know what it means or you're actually doing the work. So, I mean, think of anything. I mean, there is, right, a subject called music theory. There are some people who are simply musicologists. They approach music from the standpoint of knowing all of the artists who played certain songs. They may go further and further to know what key they were in and whatever. That's not the same as being a musician. Being a musician means you have theory, but then you're going to presumably home, and you're practicing for a couple of hours a day. Pianists, classical guitarists, others, they go over the basics, the fundamentals again and again, always starting with scales, some kind of warm-up exercises in classical guitar, etudes, the studies, and so on. So you can understand that there's a difference between being a believer in theory, or believing that you can overcome your nervous symptoms in theory, but by the end of the year 2022, you haven't had a nervous breakthrough. You haven't had a breakthrough. Well, the reason will be, and I hope that's not the case, but the reason would be is because you believed it in theory only, and you didn't do the hard work that it's going to take. So I repeat this all the time. By the way, when it comes to pianists and violinists and classical guitar and all this, even trumpeters, brass, scales are an integral part. I'm a rudimental drummer. I mean, I'm a drummer. I play a kit as well, but I'm a rudimental drummer. We have rudiments. We have a single stroke roll, and we have a double stroke roll or a long roll, and we have paradiddles and flam paradiddles, and we have flammecues and ratomecues and all these different rudiments, and you practice. I'm not young, and when we warm up to play something, you still warm up the same way you did 58 years ago. Start out with warming your hands up, okay? So what are you trying to say, Pastor? What I'm trying to say is this. You have already noticed, and if you're a new subscriber, I kind of forewarned you about this. I repeat myself a lot. How come? Why? Again, it doesn't matter if it's football, if it's boxing, strength training. You got to go over the fundamentals again and again and again and again and again. And even when they really are learned, like I said, in music, start off with scales. It's the same thing. Because without that, we have a tendency to not only forget, but we have a tendency to look at overcoming, in our case, nervous symptoms, just in a theoretical sense. Oh, I believe it's going to happen. I believe it can be done. Great, that's where we start. But if you don't do the hard work, and I'm just being honest with you, it's not going to happen. All right, so how do you have a nervous breakthrough? Well, we had a couple of good comments since yesterday's broadcast. One, someone wrote in about panic attacks first thing in the morning, or a panic attack happening when they're startled. For many, many years, changed a little bit. For many, many years, my children would have to touch me like that, or my wife too, just kind of call me and then touch me. And I would have I would get up very aggressively. I'm not sure all of the reasons for that, but it was a lot like the PTSD that we hear about. Yeah, and night terrors. Okay, there's reasons behind these things. Well, first of all, from a spiritual aspect, we can never rule out Satan and demonic powers. I don't talk about that a lot in this broadcast, but we can't rule them out. Secondly, there are physiological principles involved if you want to have a nervous breakthrough. There's habits that you've built up over the years that must change, and habits, bad habits, are stubborn. Just when you think you've got it beat, boom, it comes back again. Now, I'm warning you and exhorting you that this is going to happen to you. So, unless you're really an exception, and that would be great. If everybody who watched these broadcasts were all exceptions and you never had to watch again, that would be great. But that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. What's going to happen is that you're going to have to practice and practice and practice. And just when you think you've overcome a habit of thinking or a habit that's in your body, boom. Could be months, sometimes years later, boom, it comes back again. But let's look at the bright side. If you could put off your symptoms for a couple of years right now, that would be a great respite from what you have been having over the last, well, who knows, how many months and years for many of you. So if you want to have a nervous breakthrough, you can't be doing things in theory. You have to be doing the hard work. Now, look, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example from my life. One of the things that I have written down as one of my goals, for a daily goal, is to do something I either fear to do, and if possible, on the same day, to do something I hate to do. Now, most of these things are very minor and very trivial. And to you, if I told you there's something I hate to do, you say, well, what's the big deal? Well, not to you, it's not, but to me it is, and vice versa. But I'm not going to say to you, well, what's the big deal? Because I do have the understanding that this is something you just hate to do. And the other is do something every day that you fear to do. I get to give a lot of things, but like public speaking, but you're not going to have opportunity to speak up much in public like I do. But you could speak up in your own home, or you could speak up in a group of people that you're with at the marketplace or whatever. Let's say, for example, you were dealing with shyness, which is an excessive sense of self-consciousness. And so you don't want to speak up rather. You're afraid that if you say the wrong thing or whatever, it's something you fear to do. And this is how we conquer it. We conquer it by saying, okay, every single day, I'm going to take an opportunity to speak up a bit. And you're going to be fearful. And your body's going to have sensations. There could be a trembling of the hands, some sweaty palms, thoughts are racing, heart is beating, and on and on and on. But if you don't do the hard work, I'm just trying to be honest with you. And I didn't mean to be rude yesterday when I said you might as well unsubscribe from the channel. I'm just trying to be truthful. If you're not going to do the hard work, well, of course you're welcome to listen, but there won't be much of an expectation that by the end of 2022, you'll be done with your symptoms. Only those of you who are actually going to do the hard work, meaning I'm advising you to find something that you fear to do and to do it every single day. Find something that you hate to do. It could be just something you procrastinate about. I gotta be honest with you, I'm pretty good at procrastination on a lot of things. And so I said, this is just a bad habit. It's a bad habit. So I've done what I'm telling you to do. I practice myself. I try to find something every day that's a bit uncomfortable for me, which means it's a fear, and I go at it. Something I hate to do, which could be any number of things, and I go at it. That's every single day. Every single day. Today I'm just giving you kind of a broad, general picture of what it's going to take to have a nervous breakthrough. You're going to have to look at your fears straight in the eye the way I'm looking at you right now and say, I'm coming at you. You will not dominate my life anymore. I think I told you the story of my anxiety about going to the dentist. I mean, many people have that anxiety, but wow, it was a major thing for me. It really was, because I had some surgery on my gums years ago, and it caused me a lot of pain. I mean, afterwards, I had pain for years. So anyway, finally, the day of reckoning came, and I had to begin to make regular visits to the dentist. I mean, my teeth are good, don't get me wrong. I didn't have any cavities. I didn't have any problems with my teeth until one day I did have problems with my teeth, and I had no option. So I had to brave the sensations. I had to go against my fear. I had to do what is just normal. Most of you have gone to the dentist, didn't care for it, but you came back. I mean, you went and came back. Whereas for me, I kept avoiding it. Right? But no longer. Because I refuse to live in a state of where fears are going to dictate to me, where they're leading me into a life that I don't want, rather than me saying, this sensation, this thought is not going to dominate my life. This is what I want you to hear today. This is the so-called takeaway. The takeaway is that if you want to have a nervous breakthrough, rather than a nervous breakdown, or God forbid, another nervous breakdown, you got to attack your fears head on. I have a friend of mine that some years ago was suffering from some pretty serious depression, and we talked about it, and then he came and visited my group a little bit too. And I told him my philosophy of life, and he liked it, and I think that he employed it for his own life, so I want to give it to you also. My philosophy of life is never play defense. I had a discussion with my son one day about basketball teams, and all the great basketball teams, he told me, always had a great defense. I said, yeah, but if you don't score points, you don't win. So what's the difference if you kept the the other team down to 50 points? If you don't score points, you don't win. I said, no, you got to have a good offense. In boxing, when you're fighting, you're on offense and defense at the same time. But if you're not hitting your opponent, if you're not making those punches connect, you're going to lose. So it's not really about defense. We play defense, even in chess. You move your pieces always looking for the opponent who's trying to take a piece. So that's defense. But the main thrust of life is being on the offense. It's not sitting back, waiting for a symptom to strike you and terrorize you. It's by getting up ahead of it quickly, and we'll deal with this again more thoroughly. You get a panic attack early in the morning, and this is a pretty routine. Okay, so you got a habit. So now you start preparing for that habit, such as rehearsing in your mind how you're going to respond the next time you're awakened, and begin to rehearse in your mind the calmness that you're going to go through and the thoughts that you're going to expel from your head, and that the symptoms are going to be there, whatever it is, palpitations or whatever it is, churning of the stomach. And you're going to say, okay, the palpitation is going to be there, the churning of the stomach is going to be there, the racing thoughts are going to be there, but I will not concede to them, and they are not dangerous. That's a very important theme on this channel, this broadcast. So that's just kind of an example of some things that can be done. And again, we'll cover these things more thoroughly. What I just want to do is kind of give you a little, again, a pep rally like I did yesterday. 2022. Why don't we do this? Let's get rid of these symptoms. Let's get rid of these fears. Let's get rid of these depressions. And so we got a year to go. Okay, so that's a lot of time. It's 12 months. I'll do the teaching. You do the hard work. I've already done the hard work in my own life, and there's still a lot more to do, and I do it every day. Many of the things that I'm teaching you are things that I do myself. But make 2022 the year that you say to yourself, I am going to overcome my nervous symptoms, my panic attacks, my night terrors, my depressions. And when we hit New Year's Eve in 2022, we're about to roll over the clock to 2023, you'll be able to say, I did it. I did it. As I left you yesterday, I'll leave you today. Psalm 34:4, I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and he delivered me from all my fears. This year, instead of having a nervous breakdown, let's pray for a nervous breakthrough. Father, I just thank you today for my friends and ask you to help them today to have a nervous breakthrough in the year 2022. Deliver them from their fears, anxieties, and depressions, and so on. And I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Are you all in? It can't be all in just by theory. You're going to have to do the hard work, and we'll work together on that. Okay. So that's all I have for you for today. Again, if you're just auditing this class, which is really a class, then that's fine. But if you'd like to be part of our group and get in on this ambitious goal, which can be done, and I know from some it's going to be done, then subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and I always appreciate the thumbs up. I really do. And God willing, I'll be with you here tomorrow. We're going to go at it again until we really knock this thing out. In Jesus' mighty name, let the peace of Christ be with you today. That's my prayer for you until I see you tomorrow. God bless.